On Tic-Tac-Doe.
This is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. And tonight, Campaign 80, another in our series of interviews with the candidates on the issues. Tonight, Senator Howard Baker.
Good evening. This afternoon, the deadline passed, after which no American journalists could transmit news from Iran. And Iranian officials, following up on yesterday's expulsion order, said all American journalists must be out by Friday midnight with a little extra time for bureau chiefs. But for some of the Americans, the exile might not be permanent. Bert Quint reports in his last dispatch before the blackout.
An official of Iran's Ministry of National Guidance, the Government Information and Propaganda Service, said tonight that some American journalists will be invited to return to Tehran when a decision is made about the hostages' future. Abul Qasim Sadek, head of the ministry's Foreign Press Department, told CBS News that his government considers it essential that there be an American news presence here to witness whatever kind of public investigation that the American prisoners take part in, or their release if the government should decide to free them. The ministry official tonight gave no indication as to what the government's present inclination is, or when a hearing of any type can be expected. But when it comes, he said, or should the hostages be freed, some American reporters will be brought here to cover the event. He added that his ministry is considering approaching American church groups or the American public broadcasting system to provide news coverage of Iran for the United States in the meanwhile. Bert Quint, CBS News, Tehran.
The official also said that the expulsion of the Americans might be a good thing for Iran, the United States, and the hostages. He said it might lower the temperature and help the situation as a whole. As for Iranians in this country, the Immigration and Naturalization Service said today that since mid-November, it has admitted 7,600 more of them, including 1,200 students. Although some Americans have objected to further admission of Iranians as long as the U.S. hostages are held, a spokesman for the Immigration Service says it lacks the power to bar qualified Iranians from entering. The Shah of Iran has left his retreat on a Panamanian island and gone to visit the mainland. The Shah and his Empress went to a mountain town about 300 miles north of Panama City, reportedly to look for a new home. Since mid-December, they've been living on Contadora in the Pacific. Tomorrow marks the first anniversary of their flight from Iran.
There's a clunking noise in the back, and no one has been able to find it.
Well, I'll take a look.
Oh, good.
Mr. Goodwrench really understands your General Motors car, and dealer service bulletins from GM help him spot problems fast.
Find it?
Sure did. Found it right here in this new GM service bulletin.
Keep that great GM feeling
With Mr. Goodwrench.
and genuine GM parts.
He's at over 6,000 participating GM dealers.
I never thought I'd get into these jeans again, but now I can, thanks to PVM.
New PVM appetite suppressant. You lose weight because you stick to a low-calorie diet. PVM is a clinically tested and proven way to lose weight.
Evelyn, you look great.
Well, I lost some weight, thanks to PVM.
New PVM appetite suppressant. It curbs your appetite all day long, so you stick to your diet.
If I lost weight, you could too, thanks to PVM.
The Soviet Union today characterized the UN General Assembly resolution on Afghanistan, approved last night by an overwhelming majority, as interference in that country's internal affairs. The TASS news agency said the United States, China, and their allies imposed the resolution on the UN on what TASS called the artificially concocted Afghan question. President Carter said the UN vote is an almost unprecedented worldwide condemnation of the Soviet intervention. And Mr. Carter said the Soviets face consequences from the United States that will not be light. The former U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union, Malcolm Toon, says he warned President Carter almost every day that the Soviets were willing to move into Afghanistan to protect their interests. In an interview on NBC's Today Show, a hardliner on Soviet affairs, Toon said he was surprised that Mr. Carter was surprised at what happened in Afghanistan. An OPEC oil minister said today that because of the Soviet move in Afghanistan, the oil cartel will hold an emergency meeting in March, 3 months before the next scheduled regular meeting. The oil minister of the United Arab Emirates said the Soviet intervention represents a direct threat to Middle East oil supplies. Pakistan's president said today that if Soviet troops in Afghanistan crossed the border in pursuit of rebels, Pakistani military forces would not give the Soviets a kiss on the cheek, as he put it. But if the frontier were crossed, it wouldn't be much of an even match, as Peter Collins reports.
Pakistan's armed forces are facing the Soviet threat on their border with aircraft and equipment that go back to the 1950s. This is an F-86 fighter. It was used by American pilots in the Korean War. The Air Force also has Chinese-built MiG-19s copied from a Soviet design nearly 30 years old. Both aircraft are no match for the modern Russian fighters in Afghanistan. The United States cut off military aid to Pakistan in 1965 because of its wars with India. The U.S. has since refused to sell Pakistan combat aircraft or even spare parts. A few F-86s are kept flying with parts taken from others. The Armored Corps uses M47 tanks retired by the U.S. Army more than 20 years ago. President Carter is offering Pakistan $400 million worth of economic aid and defensive weapons for use along the frontier with Afghanistan. It's not clear whether this will satisfy Pakistan. Pakistan says it does not expect a Soviet push across its border. But Soviet MiGs of the Afghan Air Force, possibly flown by Russian pilots, have been repeatedly violating Pakistan's airspace with impunity. Pakistan's military men say they'll make do with what they have. But there's an underlying tone of bitterness that an old ally, the United States, is now asking them to help contain a Soviet thrust with what they call museum pieces. Peter Collins, CBS News, Peshawar, Pakistan.
Amnesty International, the human rights group based in London, charged today that Soviet officials are conducting a major crackdown on dissidents. It says the Soviets have arrested more than 40 persons in the last 3 months. Some dissidents claim the crackdown is a preliminary to the Summer Olympics in Moscow. Yugoslav President Tito is reported slightly improved following his unsuccessful leg operation, but his countrymen clearly are concerned about what Russia might do if he dies. Yugoslav armed forces are in a modified state of alert. Communist Party officials have called a series of local meetings to discuss defense measures. Yugoslavia has condemned the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. A similar move against a Yugoslavia without Tito always has been seen as a threat.
Because of a certain ability I possess, I've been asked to tell you all the useful shopping information you can find in the Bell System Yellow Pages. Names, addresses, phone numbers, maps, directions, credit cards, items for sale, charge accounts, deferred payment plans, brand names, regular valet parking, custom work, machine work, quantity discounts, colors, days and hours of business, insurance, bonding, deliveries, endorsements, cash and carry, 24-hour service, estimates, illustrations, years in business, same day
When you need to know who, what, where, when, and why, let your fingers do the walking through the Bell System Yellow Pages.
Thank you.
When I'm constipated, I want relief I can depend on overnight. Phillips is a true blue friend.
My laxative should work overnight, too, and be gentle. Phillips is a true blue friend.
Phillips Milk of Magnesia Liquid works with your body as you sleep, using your body's water to lubricate and soften. Next morning, most people get gentle, effective relief.
Phillips is a true blue friend.
Phillips, available in fresh-tasting mint. America's true blue friend.
The latest CBS News New York Times poll, completed last weekend, suggests that the issue that sent President Carter's popularity soaring, the crisis in Iran, could become a political boomerang. Bruce Morton has details.
President Carter's Iran-inspired popularity in the polls seems to be slipping away. In the latest CBS News New York Times poll, 52% of our sample approve of the job Mr. Carter is doing as president.
That's way up from his low point last summer, but down from Gallup poll measurements in December and earlier this month after the taking of the hostages. The president does best in the Middle West. He does better in general than on specifics. Our sample narrowly approves his handling of foreign affairs at a time when our people thought those issues the most important, and massively disapproved his handling of the economy. Overall, our sample had a favorable impression of the president, a change from when we asked that question last November.
Democrats like the president for personal qualities, comments like, he's a nice guy, and for honesty, morals, religion. And overall, our sample had an unfavorable impression of Edward Kennedy.
That's a change from last November, too. Kennedy's problem isn't just Iran.
9% of the Democrats we polled disliked Kennedy for Chappaquiddick or his private life.
And more people in our sample think Kennedy is lying about Chappaquiddick than did when we asked that question last November. Democrats in our poll favored Mr. Carter for the presidential nomination, though not by as much as some earlier polls have. California's Governor Brown is almost off the chart. The president did especially well with older voters and with those who said they took a lot of interest in the campaign, presumably the ones most likely to vote or turn out for a caucus.
By contrast, Kennedy did better among Democrats with little interest in the campaign. 1/5 of our Democrats said they wouldn't vote for him under any circumstances. As for Republicans, they like Ronald Reagan.
They like him much better than our sample as a whole does, and they want him to be their party's nominee. He's particularly popular with those who take a lot of interest in the campaign, though George Bush does well with that group too. 15% of our Republicans volunteered that Reagan's age, he'd be 70 just after taking office, was something they disliked. Older Republicans felt more strongly than the rest about that. Republicans know John Connally, but are split on whether they like what they know. Some dislike him because he switched parties. For other Republican candidates, name recognition still comes very hard. Over half the Republicans in our sample still don't know enough about John Anderson or Howard Baker or Bush or Philip Crane or Bob Dole to have an opinion about them. On the issues, almost everybody wants to get tough with the Russians and to increase defense spending. On Iran, we're confused. Our sample approves Mr. Carter's handling of the situation, though approval is dropping. It doesn't think other candidates should criticize him.
But at the same time, our sample said the president hadn't done enough, that he should take stronger action, even though they also told us such action might make things worse, and they didn't think anybody else could have handled the situation any better. If there's an underlying theme to all this, it's that public opinion this election year is very volatile, that the public mood really can, in the old cliche, turn on a dime. Bruce Morton, CBS News, Washington.
Our poll was a random sample telephone survey of 1,468 persons nationwide. Its findings are subject to potential sampling errors of plus or minus 3 to 5 percentage points. United Auto Workers President Douglas Frazier endorsed Senator Kennedy today for the Democratic presidential nomination, but Frazier stressed that he spoke for himself, not his 1.5 million member union. Fred Kroll, head of the Brotherhood of Railway and Airline Clerks, took a similar stand for Kennedy yesterday. Incidentally, the Reader's Digest and the Washington Star questioned Kennedy's testimony about tides and currents when he swam to Edgartown after the Chappaquiddick accident that killed Mary Jo Kopechne. Kennedy, at a news briefing to challenge the new studies, said, "I know what direction the tide was moving that night," and testified to it under oath. The price of gold continues to soar. In New York, it closed at a sizzling $710.50 an ounce, and in London, the afternoon fixed price was $684. American Airlines ground workers walked out today in several cities, causing many flight cancellations. Almost all American Airlines flights from San Francisco were stopped. The strike also hit Los Angeles, Dallas, Fort Worth, Tulsa, and LaGuardia Airport in New York City. The stock market today moved up. Trading was heavy.
I've got two sides to my personality. That's why the new low-price Subaru four-wheel drive hatchback is for me. Well, you know, the Jack Benny in me loves the gas mileage. Then sometimes I feel like Clark Gable. So I shift my Subaru from front to four-wheel drive. And frankly, my dear, it takes me anywhere. The 1980 Subaru four-wheel drive hatchback. For the Jack Benny and the Clark Gable in you.
When you want to tell someone something very important, and the message isn't getting through, maybe there's a better way to say it. Your FTD florist has a wide selection of special FTD bouquets, each one designed to say just the right thing in just the right way. After all, we've been helping people say it right since 1910.
Helping you say it right.
The Supreme Court has unanimously upheld California's grant of immunity to parole officers against suits for their parole decisions. The action came in the case of a San Diego man who sued because of the kidnap and murder of his 15-year-old daughter by a paroled sex offender. A federal judge in Brooklyn has ruled unconstitutional the limits Congress put on abortions paid for by welfare. In 1976, in the same case, the same judge issued an injunction to prevent cutoff of funds for abortions for the poor. However, the Supreme Court removed that injunction and sent the case back to the judge for further, more complete hearings. Fred Graham reports.
The 640-page decision by Federal District Judge John Dooling of Brooklyn declared unconstitutional the so-called Hyde Amendment, which bans most abortions for poor women funded by Medicaid. The decision declared the Hyde Amendment unconstitutional on two grounds. It discriminates against women who want abortions by paying for virtually every other medical service but abortions. And it denies religious freedom to women whose faith permits abortions.
Many religions believe that a woman faced with a pregnancy has a duty to consider whether she should bring a child into the world or have an abortion.
But a spokesman for the Roman Catholic Church took a different view.
It's a secular issue dealing with human life, and I think the people should decide it through proper legislative processes.
In the Congress of the United States?
In the Congress of the United States. I don't think this type of issue should be handled in the court system.
The judge stayed his own order to permit the losing side to appeal. Because of the importance of the case, it will probably go directly to the Supreme Court, where a decision could come in about a year. Fred Graham, CBS News at the Federal Courthouse in Brooklyn.
Both sides made their opening statements today in the Pinto trial, where the Ford Motor Company is accused of homicide. Bob McNamara reports from Winamac, Indiana.
Prosecutor Michael Cosentino told the jury of 5 women and 7 men he would prove Ford built and sold the Pinto while knowing the car was dangerously prone to catch fire if hit from behind. And yet he said Ford did nothing to correct the problem or warn people who owned the subcompact car. Ford, Cosentino said, was concerned more with cost than with safety, that Ford deliberately chose profit over human life by rejecting the advice of its own engineers to improve fuel tank safety. And of the 3 teenage girls who burned to death in a Pinto that was hit from behind by a van a year and a half ago, Cosentino said, they needlessly died as the result of callous, indifferent, and reckless omissions by the Ford Motor Company. Again, he said, Ford sacrificed human life for profit. Ford's chief attorney and former Watergate prosecutor James Neal took a different tone. Ford is a corporation, he said. I guess you can say it was bloodless. But Neal followed up saying Ford has more than 500,000 employees and some 300,000 stockholders. And he told the jurors, you'll be trying decent people in a very difficult world that's getting more difficult every day. Neal indicated he would prove the 3 victims of that 1978 Pinto crash did not die because of the car, but because the Pinto was hit from behind by a van traveling 50 miles per hour. And at that speed, he said, he could prove from his own car crash tests that even big cars would suffer the same consequences. Tomorrow, the prosecution will call its first witnesses, including a number of people who saw the fatal Pinto crash and the fire that engulfed it. Bob McNamara, CBS News, Winamac, Indiana.
The longtime leader of the American labor movement, George Meany, was buried today near Washington. As his coffin was arriving for the funeral, 2 intruders flung leaflets put out by a radical group. The pallbearers were his grandchildren. After the disruption outside St. Matthew's Cathedral near the White House, the Requiem Mass went on without interruption. Besides U.S. and foreign officials, some 1,400 persons attended the services. There was a sheet draped over the crypt of Martin Luther King Jr. at the ceremony for what would have been his 51st birthday. The sheet was there because last night somebody painted red, black, and green stripes on the marble tomb. Both Mrs. Rosalind Carter and the civil rights leader's widow, Mrs. Coretta Scott King, renewed appeals to make January 15th a national holiday, and workmen bent to the task of removing what the vandals had done. American writer and anthropologist Robert Ardrey, who wrote such bestsellers as The Territorial Imperative and African Genesis, has died of cancer at his home near Cape Town, South Africa. Ardrey, who was 71, first became known for his stage and screenplays and turned to anthropology 25 years ago.
What's a little girl like me, Sandy Duncan, doing in a big place like this?
Well, it's my way of reminding you that here in a wheat field is where wheat thins begin. Wheat thins, the light little cracker with the big wheat taste. They're just loaded with natural whole wheat, and they're really delicious, right from the box or with something on top. Wheat thins, the light little cracker with the big wheat taste. I just love them. Baked only by Nabisco.
Marty has an appetite for life, which means he doesn't sit it out. He also has an appetite for foods like Fleischmann's 100% corn oil margarine, a delicious part of a low-cholesterol, modified fat diet. Fleischmann's. For people who have an appetite for life, we have a way to help satisfy it.
Fleischmann's margarine, because you have an appetite for life.
Tonight, we have another report in our series of interviews with the candidates on the issues of Campaign 80. Tonight, Senate Republican leader Howard Baker of Tennessee.
The business of politics has become so mean and nasty. It is so personalized and sometimes so dreadful that if we don't find some way to re-civilize politics in the United States, nobody worth their salt's going to compete. Now,
the Senate Minority Leader chose to announce in the same room where he co-chaired the Watergate hearings. He was perhaps the only Republican to be helped by Watergate, as his calm, careful reasoning won him overwhelming praise from television viewers.
the central question at this point is simply put, what did the president know, and when did he know it?
In his bid for the presidency, Baker's foreign policy split with the other Republicans on the Panama Canal Treaty, but he's rejoined in opposition to SALT II and the president's grain embargo. To avoid future Irans, he proposes an elite 50,000-man unit to support American diplomats overseas, a unit he calls the 1st Brigade.
I would think of such a quick reaction force as a considerable deterrence to future terrorist acts like occurred in Iran. That is, I believe that other radical students, so-called, might think twice before they invaded an American embassy or took American hostages if they knew there was a highly trained anti-terrorist group in being that was highly mobile and might be there in hours after they tried to do that as an extension of the Marine Guard.
If you had had that force in being at the time of the hostage-taking, you mean you would have committed it at that time?
I mean, I certainly would have considered that. I certainly would have considered the use within the first few hours of such a unit to reinforce that Marine Guard. After the first few hours, there simply isn't much you can do about it.
To combat inflation, Baker applies the same general fiscal conservatism of his opponents, against wage and price controls, for a balanced budget and a tax cut. But he refuses to say the budget can be balanced by simply cutting back government.
There's no way on earth that this country is ever going to balance the budget, pay off the deficit, provide for our defenses, and meet our social obligations if we continue to bake the same size pie and cut smaller slices. What we got to do is bake a bigger pie. And what I mean by that is we've got to have a revised tax code, a revised attitude toward the economy of this country so that we create wealth. We are no longer creating wealth. We have not had a significant increase in the rate of the production of wealth in this country, new wealth, since John F. Kennedy and his tax cut in the 60s.
He proposes a governmental reorganization that would split large departments into smaller, more manageable units.
I think we made a mistake when we created HUD, HEW. I think they're too big to be managed. I'd rather see smaller agencies and departments with a more specialized mission. Most of the things that happen to people in this country don't happen as a result of what Congress does or the president does, but rather because of what the bureaucracy does through rules and regulations. And you can't find those people, and if you found them, you couldn't vote for them or vote against them. We must remove that cloak of anonymity. So last, I propose the creation of a system of federal administrative magistrates, not judges, more like mail carriers, who would be known to the neighborhood. You get a letter from someone says you haven't got enough exit signs in your bathroom, in your restroom, and it occurs to you you just got one door, then you know somebody you can go to and try to stay the effect of a ridiculous order.
He supported the formation of a Department of Education as the first step toward breaking up a super agency, something his opponents see as more bureaucracy. On special domestic issues, he's hard to slot. For ERA, against most federal funding for abortion, but also against a constitutional ban, against gun control and school busing, for school prayer.
I'm not ideologically conservative, liberal, moderate. I call them like I see them.
Baker addresses the energy crisis by joining the other Republicans in opposition to oil price controls, but along with Bush comes down hard on the side of windfall profits taxes, with stern talk for the oil companies.
They should be keenly aware of the fact that their future is at stake, not from me, but because this nation will devour them if they ever gain the idea that the oil companies truly are gouging the public. So I hope, for the sake of free enterprise, for the sake of the country, and for the sake of the oil companies, that they will plow those profits back into new production facilities, that they'll lead the way in trying to find new discoveries and new systems. If they do that, they'll come out heroes. If they don't, it'll be a disaster.
What's wrong with the current energy program? Why do you want to disband the Energy Department in favor of an energy czar?
I think it grew like topsy. I think it is the worst recent example of an administrative bureaucracy out of control. I think that it should be pointed out, as you no doubt know, that the annual operating budget now for the Department of Energy is greater than the combined exploration and development budgets for every major oil company in the United States. Now that's ridiculous.
Baker agrees with the other Republicans that nuclear development must continue. Baker's running on his Senate record, and he has no time for those who suggest that a legislator, a compromiser, can't lead.
It's a bum rap. The idea that a man of the Senate or the Congress can't be a good president. John Kennedy was. I think Lyndon Johnson had extraordinary talent and was a good president until Vietnam undid him. One of the great problems that President Carter has is his failure to understand, I expect, but in any event, his inability to get along with the Congress, even a Congress of his own party. I get along better with the Democratic Congress than he does.
Senator Howard Baker, another in our series of candidates and the issues. And that's the way it is. Tuesday, January 15th, 1980. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.
In the world of Amway, this could be you.
You know, we never had the money to feel really independent until we discovered Amway. Started part-time.
We're earning extra income as Amway distributors, bringing others into it.
We run it. We're our own boss.
And being more independent is the best security.
When someone wants to tell you about Amway, listen and get the whole story.
With the world of Amway, you can do it too.
For my flare-ups of arthritis pain, this could be bad news. Chilly buildings may make minor arthritis pain feel worse. Now here's the good news. Heat helps arthritics feel strong warmth in seconds. Heat's the fastest type relief known. Speeds strong warmth deep into stiff, achy joints. Starts to work faster than pills, faster than rubs. Heat's temporary relief of pain feels great. If this means bad news for you, get the good news of Heat. You feel strong warmth in seconds. Heat.
This has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
I'm Bob Schieffer. A year ago tomorrow, the Shah left Iran. Now, as American reporters leave, American hostages remain. The latest developments here on Wednesday morning.
Tomorrow, here on CBS.
An update on last night's